Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new entitled people content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
The first story is titled, "We staged a coup to get rid of the greedy HOA management after they neglected the neighborhood." There really is nothing like a couple of neighbors coming together for the betterment of the neighborhood. There is also nothing like a crappy HOA president getting kicked out and moving away because of the shame he feels. You see, my neighborhood had an HOA. And surprisingly, the HOA was not always that bad nor hard to deal with. As a matter of fact, our HOA only became a pain in the ass when a new president took over. We did not know much about the new president from the start, but just a couple months down the line, we started noticing problems. The neighborhood started looking so bad, I would almost prefer one of those HOAs that fine you for your grass being too tall, haha. You see, just a couple of months after this new president took over, common areas in the neighborhood began to go unmanaged. Now, I know an unmowed lawn and overgrown flower bushes may not be the biggest thing to worry about, but I did enjoy how nice the neighborhood had looked. As a matter of fact, it was one of my favorite reasons living there. It used to be so beautiful. Other things in the neighborhood started quickly deteriorating as well over the course of several months. The neighborhood was just starting to look unkempt and dull, it was losing its shine. Well, my neighbor and I had planned to bring this up at the next meeting. I am sure other people wanted to bring it up as well. However, right before the meeting, the board announced that all 1,100 plus HOA members would be paying annual fees that were raised 51% from the previous fee. This was absurd. Why should we be paying all this money when the HOA was neglecting the neighborhood? Well, one of the neighborhoods did some snooping around and investigating, and they were able to find out that the HOA reserves account, you know, the one that pays for stuff around the neighborhood from the fees and whatnot that we pay, was completely depleted of funds. From what we know, the account usually had 100k 150k. So where in the hell did all this money go? Not only that, after hearing about this, a couple of other neighbors did some of their own investigation, and they were about to find out that there was another account, which was supposed to have an additional 90k 100k in it that was also depleted. The money from this account came from a cell phone tower company that the neighborhood leased some space to. Word started circulating around the neighborhood, and we all decided to come together in order to push the board president out. We also had planned to nominate my neighbor, who found out about the original empty account, for the position of the new board president. Well, the day of the meeting came, and hundreds of HOA members were crammed into that meeting room. There were even people lined up and gathering outside. Inside the meeting room, people were constantly questioning where the money was, and my neighbor had even obtained documents that proved there should have been a lot more than what was in the accounts. Not only did the HOA president hardly speak, but several of the board members just beat around the bush and did not answer any questions directly. What was supposed to be a productive meeting led to many of us feeling irritated and frustrated. If the neighborhood was being maintained, then I assume most of us would not have an issue with the accounts being low in funds. But it was obvious there was some sort of greed happening here, and we were not okay with it. So, a bunch of the neighbors got together, and decided to take actions ourselves. One of the neighbors had some connections and knew a fairly good lawyer. We figured we would stage a coup in order to recall the HOA president and the board. However, we figured without legal help, this would fail for many reasons. So, with the help of a lawyer, we were able to stage an official coup to recall the HOA board members. Our lawyers had sent an appeal to the Department of Business and Professional Regulation, which oversees such disputes and issues within HOAs. This would start an official election for the HOA board members. We were still waiting on a decision when we produced a way to get the word out. We knocked on everyone's doors to let them know what was happening, and how they could vote to help. While I was skeptical of doing this at first, it seemed to be working because before you know it, we had enough votes in intertest to have our first HOA election in years. Prior to this, elections were rare as most board members would voluntarily leave their positions before election times were up. As word got around that we were doing this, several board members actually put in their resignation letter and quit on the spot, leaving the HOA. And the HOA president followed shortly after. We were able to vote in a new HOA president and a new board member as well. So far, everything has been going really well. I am glad we went through the hassle of getting legal help involved. Oh, and the previous HOA president was ordered to pay back funds to the accounts, because he had been using it for personal use. And our common areas and neighborhood is starting to look beautiful again. The next story is titled, I repeatedly tried telling the big box hardware store that the lawnmower waiting for pickup was not my lawnmower. But they wouldn't take no for an answer. So, I think this fall into this category, but it all started with me purchasing a lawnmower at a big box hardware store. In the interest of keeping them anonymous, let's just call them Rob Lowe, or Lowe's for short. I walked in one day looking to finally purchase a new mower, and I was in luck as they had a smoking deal on a display model. Unprepared to be going home with a new mower that day, I didn't bring my truck. So, I simply asked if I could set it aside and come back in a little bit with my truck. I returned maybe 30 minutes later and picked up my mower and headed home. This should be the end of the story, but weirdly, it isn't. Fast forward about 2 weeks later and I get a call from Lowe's informing me that my mower is ready for pickup. Confused, I replied, "Pardon me?" So, they reminded me that I ordered a mower about 2 weeks ago and it just arrived and is awaiting pickup. Now I know most would have seized the opportunity right there, but I decided to be a good person and I explained to the employee that no, I didn't order a mower, I bought a floor model and set it aside to pick up later, which I did. The employee thanks me, apologizes for the confusion, and says he'll update the order. Well, 1 week later they call again, same thing, and I once again explain why it's not mine. They did this once a week for 3 weeks straight, and after the third time I tell the wife I swear if they call me again, I'm going to pick up my mower. At this point now I'm just excited, I'm watching my phone, hoping they'll call, because in my mind I've earned it at this point, and I want my free mower. Well, lo and behold, week 4 hits and guess who calls? I am now ready to accept my free mower, but I'm also unsure how this is going to play out. I don't know if it's paid for, I don't have a receipt, it seems like a long shot. So, I simply tell the employee I'm so sorry I haven't been in yet to get it, but I got called out of town for work and just got back in. With that said, I have no idea where I put the receipt. The employee kindly replies, "Oh, no worries. It's paid in full, so all you need is a photo ID matching the name on the order." Perfect. I call the wife to let her know I'm picking up our new mower, she just laughs, still positive that once I get there, they won't have a mower to give me. "But you'll be happy to know I pull in, tell customer service I'm here for my mower, show them my ID, and next thing you know some guy on a tow motor is loading a brand new, in the box, unassembled mower into the back of my truck and off I go. Still have that mower today. I thought about returning the original afterwards, but I just got nervous it would somehow raise the alarms. Then I was going to sell it on Marketplace, but shortly after all this I had bought a new house and my best friend put in a lot of hours helping me move and he too had been looking for a new mower, so I just gave it to him instead as a thanks for helping me. I still ended up with a brand new mower for essentially 60% off and then was also able to pay for movers with the original one, so it was still a win-win. I genuinely tried telling them it wasn't my mower, but they insisted it was, and it would be rude to refuse their offer. The next story is titled, Crappy Bosses Fuck Around and Found Out. I had a job working warehouse, delivery for a store. The entire corporate structure was built on treating the people below you like crap, and that was passed down through every level. Managers would just bark orders and bitch you out for any reason they could think of. They paid about 25 cents over minimum wage, and the bosses drove BMWs and Mercedes. The big boss lived in an $8 million house. Our store was the freight hub for 4 others in the little chain, so we got to know the drivers from the other stores well as they were always coming to load freight or drop stuff off. One day, we're sitting with 2 drivers from another store, and Buddy remarks that he and his partner are working over 60 hours a week. I say he must be doing okay with all that overtime pay. He says they're not getting OT, just paid a straight time rate. I ask him if he signed an averaging agreement, he says no. He shows me his pay stub, and there it is. His partner comes back and confirms all this, and they've been doing it for months. He'd asked his manager about OT and been told that straight pay was just the way it worked. I tell them that's illegal and urge them to take it to labor relations. They're reluctant to rock the boat, figuring they'll be fired. So, I drop it. We never got any overtime. Our warehouse was busy, our store was not. A couple months later, they're in again, and Buddy's partner tells us he and his girlfriend are moving back east, and he's giving his notice. I tell him again to file a complaint. Nothing to lose now. So, he does. A few weeks go by, and when I come in one day, there are expensive boss cars parked all along the loading dock. My workmate says something big is going down. All the managers have been summoned and are inside with a bunch of people in suits. So, we wander upstairs to see what's going on. The company bookkeeper had an office in our store and handled all the payroll. He was a Chinese immigrant, nice guy. The bosses were trying to pin this on him, saying he didn't speak English very well, which was true, and had obviously screwed everything up. Turns out he was a pretty cagey guy. He knew what they'd told him to do was illegal and was able to produce all the records of him telling them that, and of them telling him to basically just shut up and do it. He hands it all over and quits. I see Buddy, with a new partner, a few weeks later. He's got a pay stub for about 15 paychecks worth of earnings. Company got caught for all the overtime pay and a pretty substantial fine on top of that. Added bonus. The second in command had driven over a nail when he parked his silver BMW on the loading dock and had a flat when he came out of the store. He opened his trunk and called me over and said, "Change that for me." I told him sorry, that's not my job, and if I hurt myself, my compensation claim would be denied. As he went in to call a tow truck, I stood on the loading dock and gazed upon all the havoc I had wrought, and my heart was glad. The next story is titled, "Get Your Priorities Straight." After my husband I first bought a house, we got two adorable kittens whom we doted on like children. When they were about a year old, we got the devastating news that one had a terminal illness. We were distraught. I have only witnessed my husband cry twice in the decades we've been together, and this was one of those times. As for me, I cried so much that my eyes wouldn't even open properly. Because we were both such wrecks and had to meet with a number of vets to talk over options, and because my eyes were still nearly swollen shut, we both took leave the next day. My work was understanding and compassionate about it. My husband's job, not so much. The boss angrily told my husband, "You need to get your priorities straight." My husband went from grieving to livid. So, after we came back from meeting with the vets, my husband called up someone he knew and talked himself into a better paying job with lots of flexibility. The day after that, he showed up at work, told his boss that he'd gotten his priorities straight, and handed in his 2-week notice. The next story is titled, "Got Told Off for Helping a Fallen Pensioner." This is an old one that I just remembered while chatting to my sis. Few years back, I was leaving Morrison's, UK supermarket, and stopped my car as a pensioner crossed the pedestrian crossing in the car park. She reminded me of my dead grandmother, to be honest, and she gave me a friendly wave as she passed. Then it happens, some teenage brat runs by knocking the old lady over. I pull up again, hazard lights on, and go to her. Now I'll say here and now I have no first aid training, but know some of the basics. Ask her if she's hurt and she tells me mainly winded, she's not bleeding visibly, but says she wants to sit not on cold concrete. So, I ask her if she can stand, and I'll sit her in my car. We manage that between, and I ask her if there is someone to call for her. She pulls get own phone and calls her daughter. At this point some of the Lukey Lois who have done nothing but watch decide to chime in with comments. Shouldn't have let her move, should have left her on the floor, she's old, who cares about the elderly? Was the common thread to comments, along with asking if I expected her to pay me for helping. The comment about who cares really upset me. My gran towards the end had dementia. We had to put her in a home as she needed 24-hour specialist care that we couldn't do, and we had to sell her home etc. to pay for it. I had power of attorney in order to do this. It broke me having to do that and see a once vibrant person shut down mentally. Although we had to do that, I visited Gran every day after work and on weekends. I was raised that way, to look after others. So, I remember saying to the crowd that I help anyone I can, it's my way, but if you don't want to help, then bugger off. The lady's daughter arrived and thanked me for staying with her mum. Turns out she was called Noreen, and she was a lovely person. When I shared this back then on the Book of Faces, I got loads of comments about how I should have just driven off and left the stranger to suffer on the floor. So yeah, not a drama-filled memory, but sharing it helped me depressed state, I guess. The last story is entitled Neighbor Strikes Again. I'm back. Did you miss me? I won't lie, I was hoping I would never have to post again, and she would become a normal neighbor. I was wrong. So, she was so quiet for so long and her car was barely there. I was starting to think maybe she had moved out, but I got a nice reminder last week that she is still around. To start this story, I must give a brief background. There are 8 units total in this building. I am on the ground floor and the very nice old lady across the hallway. And I have an unspoken rule that if one of us is home and the other isn't, we sign for and accept packages, so they just aren't left in the hallway. I had been expecting a package and I had a feeling it was going to show up while I was at work, but I wasn't worried because of my nice old neighbor. She would drop it off when I got home. No drama, right? Wrong. My nice old neighbor had actually gone away for a few days, so with nobody around, my package was left next to my front door. But it wasn't there when I got home. Oh yes. Yes, dear reader. She had it. About 10 minutes after I got home, I heard the familiar stomping on the stairs and the banging on my door. Long story short, my package had been delivered and she wanted to do the nice thing and hold on to it until I came home, but apparently it had accidentally ripped and she saw what was inside. I won't lie, it was sex toys. I like to treat myself, sue me. The moment I opened the door, she threw my package at me, yelling how I was a disgusting pervert, and I should move out before it spreads. I told her that opening someone else's mail is a crime. It's not a crime to buy those kinds of things, but thanks for taking care of my package. Thanks for listening.